What's up guys? So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I became a Delta flight attendant. Now, I'm not a flight attendant anymore, but we can save that for another video. In this one, I just want to talk to you about the hiring process, what you go through, what to expect, and a few tips and tricks along the way. So let's get right into it. Now, the first thing you'll want to do is submit your resume. You want it to look really nice and neat and well put together. Make sure that you have a really nice description under everything that you've done. It can even go all the way back to when you were in high school. You know, if you did any mission work or any volunteering or anything like that, that can really beef up your background and make you seem different and stand out from the crowd. Feel free to put it in there because that's still experience that you had, right? Now, of course, you want to keep in mind that there are windows during the hiring process. Sometimes an airline can be hiring for flight attendants, and sometimes that window is closed. So they definitely like to announce when they're hiring, and they let you know when the closing period is, but you actually have to sometimes go out of your way if you're not in the aviation industry to begin with. If you don't work at the airport and come across flight attendants, maybe you have to go on the Delta Airlines website to figure out when those times are. But it's just one click away, and then you're on your way. Now for me, I was really lucky because as soon as I decided to start this process of becoming a flight attendant, their window for hiring was already open. So I made the cut right then and there, you know. So I submitted my resume, and about a week and a half later, I received an email from them, and they said, "Congratulations, you moved on to the next round of the hiring process. We would like to invite you to click this link below whenever you're ready and begin the second step." So what the second step is an online interview. So I didn't really know what to expect with this online interview. I thought to myself, okay, so someone from the hiring team is going to get on Skype or something with me and just ask me a bunch of questions, and that's that. Cool. No, that actually isn't the case. What actually happens is it's pre-recorded flight attendants who are part of the hiring team, and they actually ask you these questions like, describe a time when you had to confront a colleague for doing something inappropriate at work or something like that. And after this flight attendant appears pre-recorded asking you this question, smiling really nicely, and it has subtitles underneath in case you're hard of hearing, the video ends, and then it says, okay, you have, I think it was 60 seconds that you were given in order to think of a response. Either 60 seconds or 2 minutes, but I'm not sure. It's been 3 years since I was a flight attendant, so, you know, bear with me with the time. But nonetheless, you have plenty of time to think of a response. It really is no rush, and you can always click the button that says, I'm ready to respond, I'm ready to record my response. And here's a fair warning, guys. When you're being recorded and you click that record button, there's no do-over. So, you know, let's say maybe you trip on your words or something like that, that's going to be recorded. And it's not a big deal because they don't expect you to be perfect. They just expect you to come off warm, kind, professional, and well prepared. That's the biggest thing here. Now, of course, we want to dress professionally. It says that in the email, so I wore a pantsuit. And I wore the whole thing all the way down to my shoes. And I made sure that my hair was in a bun. I wore an ascot even. So just look the part, first and foremost, of course. Now, the second thing I would recommend is going on glassdoor.com, because that website for Delta flight attendants is a wealth of information. I can't tell you how grateful I am that that website existed and that so many people volunteered to write down the questions that were asked of them, because the questions that are on Glassdoor are what you're going to be asked on this online pre-recorded interview. And honestly, even those questions are going to be asked on the face-to-face interview. They're just recycled. Now, before I talk about how I prepared for this online interview, some of my tips and tricks for it, one thing I want to mention is the way that Delta Airlines prefers that you answer these questions is by this thing called the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. Now, the STAR method is a really great way to answer a question when you're being interviewed because it's nice and concise, so it doesn't take up the interviewer's time too much to get to the point, but it also provides enough detail so there's no room for questioning what actually happened in a situation. So let's give an example of this. Let's say, describe a time when you had to confront a boss. That's it. Now that's pretty open-ended. So sometimes it might be hard to figure out what exactly this employer wants from you. Well, they want to understand how you cope with situations and what happens as a result of these situations. So the situation is you don't approve of something that the boss is doing, and then you have a task, so you have an idea in your head of what you want to accomplish, the action in which you took in order to solve the problem, and then the end result. So maybe how did the person react? What was the total result of your action? So let's say that they ask you, describe a time when you had to confront a boss. So here's the STAR method to help you out. You have the situation, you're unhappy with something that your boss is doing, and then you have a task. So what do you have in your head that you want to change? And then the action is, how did you change it? What action did you actually do? Was it talking to your boss and explaining your feelings professionally? Great, well then tell your interviewer exactly that. What did you do? What did you say to your boss? And then finally, what was the result? What happened? Did the boss say, hey, I didn't know you felt that way. I'm so sorry. Or did it end poorly? Maybe the boss didn't take it very well, even though you explained it professionally. Even if that's the case, it doesn't have to be a perfect fairy tale. And then, kind of as a seasoning on top, give your interviewer a takeaway, saying, at the end of the day, we're all just people, and he's my boss. I did what I could to change the situation, but we're all human, and if he's unable to accept my honesty, then that's okay because I ended up leaving there respectfully with my head held high, and at the end of the day, all you can do is just work on yourself. You can't change other people, but you can change your situation. And so that's why I'm here with you today. So now let's dive into the more intense stuff, the preparation of it all. Now, the online interview only lasted about 6 to 7 questions worth of speaking. So I would say overall it took me maybe 20 minutes max, but the amount of preparation, man, okay. So if you go into Glassdoor, you will see pretty much all of the questions that Delta Airlines will ask you as a flight attendant or potential flight attendant. Now, some of these questions are kind of repetitive. Like I mentioned before, and this is a real interview question, describe a time when you had to confront a coworker versus describe a time when you had to confront a boss. Those are both Delta Airlines interview questions, but they're both so similar that, maybe you don't have a situation where you had to confront a boss, but you had a situation where you had to confront a coworker. That's totally fine. What I actually did in one of my interview questions that I was asked because I didn't have any experience in one of those questions, I just told them that unfortunately I don't have a time when that happened to me, but I do have a similar time when this happened to me. And then you go into the STAR method and talk about what happened, what action you took, what the result was. And if you don't think that's enough, even just give a little takeaway. So what I did was I went on Glassdoor and I wrote down all the questions that were listed on there, and then I wrote an answer for every single one, even if it was slightly different, or if I couldn't come up with an answer because I've never experienced something remotely close to a question that they're asking me to describe for an answer, I would just, point an arrow up on the piece of paper to a similar situation that I could reference. And so I studied those pieces of paper every single day. I had my boyfriend at the time rattle off questions. I had my parents rattle off questions. And I just felt very prepared for this because every single day I would go over the questions. I would dig into my past and think about times that I had to deal with certain situations. And luckily, I did have a lot of experience with all the situations that they were asking me. So when the time came, I made sure that I was dressed head to toe, super professional, like we mentioned before. I made sure that the background was nice and simple. So whatever the hiring team saw, I made sure that it was very professional. So by this time, I had gotten ready for the interview, super prepared, clicked on the link in the email to start that online interview. I made sure I looked professional, of course. I made sure that the background of my screen looked very professional as well. So a nice and simple background, kind of like this. It could even have like a bed behind it or anything like that. So having your bed in the background is totally fine. Just make sure that it's very, that your bed is made, that it looks like you take care of your apartment or your bedroom or what have you. And just make sure that there's nothing too personal, like dirty laundry lying around. That doesn't look very professional, right? So we want to avoid that. And then finally what I did was I had my desk propped up against a wall. I printed out two 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper with all the interview questions and answers printed on them. I color-coded the keywords of each question in yellow, I believe, and then I color-coded the keyword of each answer in blue. Sorry, by the way, if I sound super congested because I'm getting over a cold right now and it's kind of uncomfortable to talk, but I'm getting through it. So what I did was I took those two 8.5 by 11 sheets and I taped them against the wall just slightly to the right of my laptop. So they were up and to the right. So if I had to look at them, I would look over to my right, and if I were thinking about a question, but I were being recorded and forgot what I was talking about, I could always look off to the corner and make it look like I'm thinking for a second. I can even stop and hesitate and smile and go, oh man, this was really challenging for me. And just give some like fillers before you get into the story. And like I said, for me, I memorized these questions previously, so all I would have to do is look at a keyword and bam, I would know the answer. But I just like having that safety net of, you know, if you're at an interview and you freeze up, it's online. So you can use your surroundings to your advantage. So I did that trick. I didn't actually need it because, like I mentioned, only gave me 6 questions for the interview and it was done. 6 out of, I believe, 30 questions. So not too bad. There might have been more, might have been less. I'm not sure, but you know, after 3 years, all I know is it was a lot to prepare for, given a whole situation, figuring all of your history out and putting that into a piece of paper. Yeah, it can be a little challenging, but yes. So that is what I did, and I guess it worked out because about 1.5 months later, they got back to me, and I remember feeling so desperate because at the time I was living with my parents. I'm sure some of you guys can relate, and I was just so ready to get out, you know? And I was wondering, man, you know, it's been a month, now a month and a half. Are they ever going to get back to me? I don't know. You know, what am I going to do? And finally, when I started feeling really hopeless, I received an email from them and they said, congratulations, you're moving on to the next step. We'd like to fly you down to Atlanta and do our face-to-face interview. And for those of you who go through this process and are asked to do a face-to-face interview, sometimes it takes longer than a month and a half. You know, for some of my coworkers, actually, when it came to the online process, going from the online to the face-to-face, it actually took them sometimes like 2 or 3 months. And then sometimes even after the face-to-face, getting hired on, they've gotten back to some people after a year. You know, it's crazy. On average, it doesn't take that long. But in case you feel like, oh, maybe they're not interested in me, maybe they are. Maybe it just takes some time to get you on board. So, in the next video, I'm going to be talking about my face to face experience and some tips and tricks I can give you along the way during that time, some things that they're looking for. And I hope you found this video useful. I hope it puts your mind at ease a little bit on what to expect. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!